Hello, welcome back to our creative demos. I'm Loretta Hayes from Hayes Sewing Machine Company, and today we are going to cover more with machine quilting with a ruler. You guys had such great feedback with us. We did a couple of weeks ago, I did a basic machine ruler work demo, and so we got so much feedback that we decided that we would show you a few more shapes. So today we're going to start with a triangle ruler. This is a handy quilter ruler, so it's 1/4 inch. So it's going to work on a long arm. It's going to work on a Bernina with a 72 foot. It's going to work on a lot of like higher end baby lock machines. If your machine needs a lower, smaller ruler to work on the foot, this ruler may not work, but we may be able to get you one that's very similar. So if you're uncertain about what rulers work with your machine, just call us or email us and we can get that sorted out for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The 4 rulers that I'm going to show you today are so simple to work with. And so this ruler here with our triangle has actually 2 shapes. It's got an equilateral triangle and it's got an isosceles triangle. And that is all the more math that we're going to be doing today. You can do very simple designs with this very easily. So you can see this is our equilateral triangle and this is our isosceles. And so to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to draw 2 lines, excuse me. We need 4 points. So we're going to come in, and for the camera, I am drawing with a ballpoint pen so that you guys can see this, but please do not do this with a ballpoint pen. Use any of your marking tools that you would normally use for quilting. So it could be chalk, it could be an air erasable pen, it could be a water erasable pen, could be the friction pens where you iron them off, but not a marker and not a ballpoint pen as I'm doing here today. So we're going to take our rotary ruler, we're going to draw our first line, we're going to line up our rotary ruler on the line so that we get one that is 90 degrees, and then we are going to draw our line. Easier said than done. That'll be good enough. All right. So how we're going to start creating these cute little designs is we're going to pick our shape. We're going to set up our machine for ruler work. So to do that, we're going to drop our feed dogs. We're going to put a ruler work foot on. And so very important that you are using a ruler work foot. If you take a look at it in comparison to a regular free motion foot, you can see how thin this one is, where this one has a much larger piece. We can then take our ruler and our ruler will go on, up against the foot. But in the case of this foot, it would go up and then it would jump over and our needle would get that, which is not a good thing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put our ruler foot on. And if you haven't watched the previous video, you can go to YouTube and check that out for more details on setting up your machine. So we're going to come in. I think I'm going to do the isosceles triangle. So we're going to take our isosceles triangle. I've got my handy grip on the back of the ruler. Very important to put handy grip on the back of your ruler so that when you push down on your ruler, you're going to be able to move your entire project. If you don't have handy grip, what happens is the ruler slides on top of the project. And it's the difference really between, ooh, this is ruler work and this is fun, and ooh, this is ruler work and this is not fun. So we're going to start out, we're going to put our presser foot down, we're going to do a stitch in the center, and we're going to pull up our bobbin thread so that we have both threads on top of our quilt. And then we're going to take a couple of stitches, just little short ones, shifting your fabric just a tiny bit so that we can tack on. And then we can go in there with our scissors and we can clip that thread. Put our presser foot back down, and I'm going to take and I'm going to line up the line that is boldly printed or etched in the back of my ruler. It's exactly 1/4 of an inch from the edge of my ruler, and I'm going to line that up with my drawn line. And so here we go. We're going to push down on the ruler. We're going to sew forward. And what's really awesome about these triangles is that with the triangles, you're going to hit the edge of the triangle, so there's no guessing as to, ooh, should I stop? The ruler will stop you. I'm then going to take and I'm going to move the next direction. So remember, we're moving the whole thing. We're not doing a pivoting situation. We're just going to go ahead until our foot hits the back of that, and then we're coming right back to the center. At that point, we're going to leave our quilt the same, which is really awesome because, you know, on this little sample, it would not have been a big deal for me to change the position of the fabric. But when you have a large quilt and you've got fabric wrapped underneath the free arm of the machine, it's super important that you don't have to rotate that quilt. So we're just going to move the ruler so that we're going across. And we're going to then sew down, up, and down again. So we're coming back to the center. Now, nice little trick with ruler work. If you come back to the center and you're not perfectly on the center, let's say the ruler shifted just a tiny little bit. What's great about it is you can take that extra stitch, get yourself lined back up in the center, and then you can go ahead and you can line up again. Now, when I line up on this one, the ruler is actually behind my machine. And, you know, my x-ray vision, it just isn't what it used to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to like stand up. I'm going to put my head over the top here. And I'm going to go ahead and check that and make sure that that line is where I want it to be. And then we'll take off and we'll do our next shape. And back down to the center again. So one more, we'll rotate again. This time we can see it a little bit better. And so we'll go ahead and sew out our last shape. Come back to the center, move your ruler towards the middle, and you can do 1 or 2 stitches to tack off. Bring that needle up, bring that foot up, and then you can go in there and trim your thread, get your ruler out of the way, and you can go ahead and trim the back. So if we flip it around on the back, you can then see that your design just looks so nice. You know, you don't see those lines. Of course, when you're marking your lines, those lines are going to come off as well on there. But it's super simple pattern. This would be fabulous if you're doing, say, like a charm square quilt, something where you have maybe a block where you have a center block, maybe on point. Just a really easy pattern to do. And it looks like you spent a lot of time drawing it out, and we only drew, you know, 2 lines. No big deal. So what happens if you would like to do, say, a border? So the border, we could do either the equilateral triangle or the isosceles triangle. So we're going to come in. I'm going to line up on a line. So normally if you were doing a border, this would be the seam where the border is coming together. So we're going to take and do a stitch, pull that bobbin thread up, and then put that foot down where we brought the bobbin thread up, and we'll do just a couple of stitches to tack on. And we're going to go in and we're going to clip that thread, get that out of the way. And so put our presser foot down. We're going to snuggle right into the edge of that ruler, the corner of it. And there's an opening where you can get this in and out. So like if I wanted to change my triangle at some point and I wanted to go to the isosceles triangle, I can do that really easily with these openings. But the other cool thing about doing this with the border is that opening, if you line up the edge of that small edge, that's going to line up right with your seam. So you always have this great visual to work with. So when I do a border, as opposed to doing the complete triangle, I'm only going to use 2 sides of the triangle. So we're going to go up to the top point. We're going to come down to the bottom point. We'll hit our line and we'll pause. If your machine has needle stop down, this is a great place to use that. Let the needle stop in the fabric. And then we're simply going to pull our ruler towards us so that the edge of the foot is now snuggled into that corner. And we're simply going to repeat that again and again. So back down to the line, we pause, we slide the ruler. And so in doing that, we have created this really cool triangle border. Now, this is just one pass of the ruler. If you wanted to make it a little more jazzy, one of the things that we could do is we could take the edge of the ruler and use it as a straight ruler. And I'm going to stitch back about halfway to the center of the base of this triangle. So we're going to come back, and how I'm eyeballing this is I lined up one of the grids on the ruler with the point, so now I'm directly across from that. If you have a Bernina and you have a 72 foot, if you look on the inside of the foot, there's actually marks doing 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. So you can actually see those marks lined up there. So now that I'm halfway back, I can pick up my foot, I can put my ruler back underneath, and this time we're going to work backwards. So I'm going to line up here. I'm just going to make sure that my grid line is lined up and I'm straight. And so I can come in, slide the ruler, make sure my lines are lined up, a little bit of aerobic sewing. And let's do one more. And we would tack off. And we have our border. So you could run a single pass. This is the isosceles triangle. This is the equilateral triangle. Could you see if you were doing a sashing between blocks rather than a border, how cool that would be, and how easy it would be to create that design without having to do any flipping of the quilt or pivoting or turning of the quilt. And the angles are always perfect because you're just following the ruler. So that is our first triangle ruler. Okay, what we learned with this one, we're going to use in the next one. And the next one is going to be the Leafy template. It looks like this. So you've got 2 leaves. You've got a leaf that has a round end, and you have a leaf that has a pointy end. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a flower with this one. And so with the flower, you can see I drew 4 lines for this. So we drew the 12 to 6, 9 to 3, and then the diagonal lines. And you can do that with your ruler. So that's easy enough to do. You can draw your lines. The up and down lines and the side to side line, not really a problem. It's the diagonal lines that you want to pay attention to. So if you are doing your diagonal lines with a rotary ruler, if you line up the 45-degree line, so the one that runs down the middle of the ruler, with your straight line, get the tip of the ruler right to the center mark there. You can draw your first part of the line, and then you can come in line it up, slide the ruler up a little bit further and draw your second part of the line. And then tip the ruler over, line up that 45-degree line with the straight line there, get your half line going here, and then finish out the rest of the line. Don't know why, but my pen just wants to die on that last line. There we go. Terrific. So not difficult to draw, but here's the thing. You know that I am not the math girl, so you can cheat if you get to doing a lot of this. Handy Quilter makes a template that is called the 8-point Crosshair Ruler. This is not a ruler for sewing. It is a ruler for marking, and you'll see that there are lines in it that you have a slot, and so you can mark your lines really easily if your pen doesn't die again. My cameraman just handed me my pen again. Thank you, Pam. All right, so we got our lines, and then you'll see in the center there is a little dot. So if you get to doing a lot of these things, by all means do the template because it's so much easier. All right, so I already did a flower with the pointy end, so we're going to do one with the round end. So we're going to start out by landing on the dot. We're going to take one stitch, we're going to pull our bobbin thread, sure we are. Couple too many stitches, and if you get that, first just break your thread, pull it back out again. This is real life, right? All right. That's so much better. Definitely want to get that bobbin thread up on top. If you leave it underneath, it's so going to get into trouble. Murphy's Law, you know. And we'll clip our threads. All right, so we're going to do the round one. So our foot's going to go down, and we're going to snug our foot right into the notch so it won't go any further. We're at the back here going to line up the notch that is the line that's etched on the bottom of the ruler so that I've got that perfectly straight, and then up we go and around. And back to the center. Now, if you are doing an 8-point or you get really excited, you're going to do 16, or if you do 32, it looks like spirograph. Little trick. Instead of moving to the next position like you would be doing a clock, if you sew the first one, so I'm going to say that this is my 12 o'clock petal, you will get less thread bulk in the center if you then go and you do the 6 o'clock petal. So always do the opposite petal to the one that you're actually stitching. So we're coming along, we're going to come back. So we're going to come back to the center. Now I'm going to pick a direction, so I'm going to pick 3 o'clock. I'm going to line up and go ahead and sew that petal and come back. And now I'm going to flip around and do the 9 o'clock one and come back. And honestly, this could be a terrific design right here, just with 4 petals. But we're going to do 8. So we're going to pop that foot down. We're going to pick another direction. Go back around, do the opposite. If you're not sure, hop up and poke your head out the back to check it out. And then let's move and do the last one. And one more, and we have our flower. Come back to that center, do just a little tack step, and then go ahead and bring up your foot and your needle and clip your thread. And so you end up with this lovely little daisy. And it can be a round-ended daisy, or it could be a pointy-ended daisy. If we added 16, we would then be doing petals in the middle there, and you would get this great secondary pattern in the center where the stitching lines overlap on there. So that is the Leafy template. Now our next template is going to be a hexagon. So this is the Hexagon Ruler. It is called the HG Hexie 1.5 inch, because that's the size that it's going to do. And just so that you know, Handy Quilter does 2 different size hexies. So they also do a 3-inch hexie as well. So the techniques that I'm going to do with the small one, you could also do with the large one if you're doing bigger quilts. So when you're looking at the hexagon, there's so many things that you can do with the hexagon. This is probably my favorite, and this is the one that we're going to do. Okay, this one, actually we'll do this one because you've seen kind of this effect. This one here is also really cool. The hexagon creates this star effect. So what's the difference between this one and this one? It is the number of lines that you have drawn. So on this one, I drew the 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, the 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then the 45 degrees. And we did it exactly as I just did the Leafy pattern. We started here, I sewed around the first one, I flipped it to the other side, I sewed around the next one, I went to the 3 o'clock, and I did 8 of them. And you can see how when they overlap, you get these wonderful patterns that develop that are just like happy accidents. This one here is the 6-line design. So I drew 6 lines. So the trick to this is not the sewing of it, it's the drawing of the lines, getting the lines perfect. But let me show you a little trick. We have a hexagon ruler, right? It's got 6 sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the ruler to help us draw our lines. So we're going to come in, we're going to make a mark right at the notch of each one of the corners of the ruler. So now all I have to do is take my rotary ruler, line up the 2 lines opposite to each other, the 2 dots, excuse me, and you're going to draw your first line. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing on the next set. And then one more set. And we now have perfectly spaced lines for our hexie. So when you go to sew this, we'll sew a portion of it. We're going to start out the same way. We're going to put our hexie ruler underneath. We're going to jump into the center. We're going to do 1 stitch. Seem to be having a problem with that this morning. There we go. And then we're going to do a little tack on and then clip our thread. So when we put the foot down, this time we're going to line up. We're going to line up the notch on a line. And if you look up here, I'm going to line up the corner of the ruler. And we're simply going to go ahead and sew around. And once again, the ruler kind of stops you. You get to the end, you know, to the corner, and the other side kind of prompts you to turn. So we're just going around the center there. Then we're going to come and we're going to do the opposite side. So we're going to flip that ruler so that the notch is here and the notch is lined up on the line there. And then we can go ahead and we can stitch And we're back to the center. We're then going to line up on our next one. Spin your ruler around. Make sure your line is lined up there. And then our last ones. Back to the center, and one more. Slide it around. Do your little tack. Pick up your foot and your needle and clip your thread. So this kind of design is super visually complicated, but so easy to do when you're actually sewing it out, and almost no marking whatsoever. Now, if you wanted to use your Hexie for a border, same kind of concept as we were looking for our triangles. So I started with my Hexagon ruler here. I sewed all the way around. I needed to get to so that I could shift the ruler. So I sewed over the last seam, the first seam. Actually, let's do it, guys, because I don't think I'm explaining it very well. So let's go ahead and do. Sometimes it's easier seen than said. All right, so we have a complete hexagon, right? So we're doing our border. So now I need to get back over here. So I'm just going to sew over that same line before I move the ruler. And then I'll go ahead and slide it into the corner here. All right, we come to the corner, we go ahead and we sew, coming back there, slide the ruler, and just keep on going. So what I love about the hexagon is if you look at this border, visually, nothing about it says hexagon. It really says more diamond than it does hexagon. And once again, all we really would need is one line, and that one line could be something we draw, but it could also just be the seam on the edge of a border to make a really cool border. Awesome. All right, so last ruler for the day is the Flower Power template. And the Flower Power template is a template that I used on a quilt that I'm finishing up for my UFO challenge. I joined a UFO challenge trying to get some of my unfinished projects done. And so with the UFO challenge, sorry guys, just trying to find my ruler. There we go. All right, so for my UFO challenge, this was actually blocks that I found when I was cleaning up during the COVID lockdown. And these blocks I didn't actually do. Pam did these. These were part of her paper piecing class that she taught. And so I put them together and created a little table topper or wall hanging. We had all the fabrics. She had a little bit of fabric left over, so you can see I got a little creative in the borders because I didn't have a full amount of fabric of anything, just to kind of finish it up. on there. So I needed something to quilt into the middle of these squares. And I kind of wanted, I mean, I could have done something geometric, but I kind of wanted something to offset the geometricness of the block. So I wanted something a little bit softer. So I thought that this was perfect. So you can see how the template just fit in there. And so we're just going to sew around, and I'll show you how to do that. Once I got that done, I then thought, well, you know, I felt like I needed a little bit more. So you'll see I have my chalked lines. And from last video on ruler work, we did circles. And so all I did was 4 circles. So I went here, 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 and came back. And it creates this really cool little orange peel flower in the center. We'll see if we can show it over on the other side. That might be a little bit easier for you to see on there. So we filled in that. So this template here, super, super simple to work with. Literally, you're just going to go around the template. So we're going to pop this on. It does have a ton of marks and a grid, and so I did use the grid to kind of help keep me in the same position. I used the little hole at the top, which I think you're supposed to be able to hang these with. I used that as the top of my flower, so I always had the same bumps in the same location. So we're going to come in, we're going to put the flower down where we want it to be, put our presser foot down, do your pull, get that bobbin thread up there, do a little tack stitch, and clip that thread, get that thread out of the way. And then we're just going to line that up right along the edge. You can really start anywhere you want on this flower. It doesn't really make any difference. You're going to go all the way around anyway. So when you're going along, you're going to work your way along. Now, interestingly, when you work on rulers that are, so everything else that I did today were inside rulers. We were trapped inside the ruler. On the outside of the ruler, the potential is there for you to kind of drift away from the ruler. So one of the things that you want to be kind of aware of is you will need to pause somewhere along in the flower. So like I'm here and my hand is kind of in the way. So I'm going to take and bring my hand around, and then I can go ahead and get started again. So you may find yourself shifting your hands on your ruler just a little bit more. The other thing that I find with rulers is this flower has a bump, right? So as I'm coming up the bump, I never come off the ruler. It's very controlled. When I'm coming down the bump, that's where I tend to, if I'm going to come off the ruler, I'll find I drift away on there. I always do the analogy of a roller coaster. As you go up the roller coaster, it's like click, 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 all very controlled, right? You crest the top and you come down the other side, and it's like, whee, coming down the other side. So you don't have to concentrate as you're going up, but you do need to apply a little bit of pressure and concentration when you're coming down. So we'll do just a quick little tack, and boom, we've got our flower. And so you can see how easy that one is. Now, just as kind of a little bonus, you could use this flower to do an all-over design. So if we take, I'm going to just draw a quick line. And remember, these lines are going to be erasable, guys, so you're not going to have this line running through the middle of your quilt. So what I'm going to do is, you'll notice that on the flower power there is one side that's gridded and the other side that just has the angles on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the template so that I have the line on the gridded line. And so I'm going to line that up. I'm going to start over here at the side. So you would normally tack, and we're going to go all the way along, up along the side here. Now I'm coming back to the bottom of the line. I then am going to take it and I'm going to flip the ruler over. So my gridded parts, find your gridded part, and you're going to line the gridded part over here. So we're going to come along, and so now I'm going to come down and I'm going to stitch down here. So we'll go along. I need to swap my hands because my hands are kind of in the way. And back we come to the line again. We would then flip our ruler, line up the grid, and then continue our way across. So sometimes you have those quilts and you're like, oh, I just want to do an edge to edge kind of thing. I don't want to have to do anything major. How cool would this be to go across your quilt going along here? And we could take it and we could draw a line, say maybe every 3 inches, and then we could line up and we would create, let's do this. I'll just jump up here and guesstimate. I'm going to line up my the grid on the bottom of my ruler here. And really all I'm paying too much attention to is, because I'm a little anal about lining up, I like the center here. So you got that line that runs down the center. I'm making sure that's lining up right in the middle of my top bump there. So that way they're going to echo. And it almost looks a little bit like a cloud. So having a cloud go all the way around. So can you see how the echo would work? Coming down through there. So I hope you enjoyed these 4 shapes, and I hope they inspired you to try some rulers and try maybe something a little different. Next time, we're going to switch topics and we're going to show you how to make a new pincushion. So we're going to show you a couple of different ways of doing pincushions. So we'll see you next week doing pincushions. Thanks.